Good tidings, all you beautiful individuals. Welcome back to another FBF League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. We've done the top 20 player rankings, but now it's time to expand it a little bit. We're going top 10 by every role because you got to get the West on these lists somehow, right?
This seems to be the only way to get some Western players into this type of conversation. And as well, I think it is important to do these type of top 10 lists for these individual roles, because again, we're going to find a time at this event where we're going to realize one of these roles is more important, more impactful than the other. And you want to be looking for those impactful players when you're previewing, looking towards a series. You'll have all the information after watching this.
And listen, even top 10, some Western teams, only a couple Western players are making it per these lists. When you got 8 LPL and LCK squads, even top 10 is tricky to crack. But when we start in that top lane, it's not one, but two. They're both EU players. We're not saying Western fully, but both Adam and, more impressively, Broken Blade cracking this list. Broken Blade current form feels like the best opportunity any Western team has had to actually compete in the top lane in years.
And I want to be careful with my excitement for it, because Broken Blade has been someone that we have seen, have mixed results on the international stage. We've seen that skill shine through. We've also been taken to task by a couple of the LPL, LCK type of players. Now, this year, this iteration of G2, this evolution of Broken Blade heading towards this event, yes, very excited to see what BB can do, how he can stack up, what he can provide for G2 in their competition against these top-level teams.
And, you got Zika and Kana in between him and Adam. Adam slipping in to that number 10 spot. We've still seen the ceiling. We've seen him do some crazy outplays. He is, of course, the ultimate double-edged sword, although since BDS has actually been good the last couple of splits, we've had less 0 and 2 Adams before minions have spawned scenarios.
It certainly has been toned down, but he is the definition of the bet on yourself type of player in that top side. He is someone that, regardless of what the situation is going to be with the jungler, whether he's going to get help, whether the other guys got help, whatever, he's betting on himself, pulling it out in that top side and getting those advantages. Worked out still for this BDS squad, and he is somebody that if you take lightly at this point in this event, in this type of list, where you say, oh yeah, you're not good enough, you're barely in this top 10 type of thing, he's a player that can turn it on real quick and thrash you.
And the evolved form of betting on yourself and the Adam playstyle is the Shy. He's the OG, number 6 on this list, and the only top laner, at least in the top 10, probably at the whole event, that you could talk about going from number 1, looking like the best top laner in the whole tournament, to looking like he shouldn't be representing at Worlds.
That is just exactly what you get with the Shy. I'm feeling 2023, though, we've narrowed it down, the spectrum of what we're going to be getting, and it is still allowing for that ultra high level of play. The outplay specialist, Mr. The Shy in the top side, what he's able to do, the plays he's able to turn around, get going, 2v1, 1v3. Who cares? My man is able to make those type of plays. He is an incredibly important cog in that machine for Weibo Gaming. And yes, his resurgence, his return to this World Championship event is punctuated with this type of appearance on this list.
And is one of the main reasons why I think for most people, Weibo is one of the most exciting teams to watch at this World Championship, regardless of how they end up finishing or how they compete. 100%, they're going to be some of the most watched games because of the volatility ahead of the Shy. And listen, in years past, you would get things thrown at you for saying Doran is higher on this list than the Shy, but as the only guy on Gen G who didn't crack the top 20, feel like we've still got to give the respect that is due for the year split that Doran has put together on Gen G.
Dependable Doran, every single chance that he has had to come up clutch, to be a player, to be someone that is actually becoming quite a threat in the LCK, is Doran for this Gen G roster. The way that he plays, the way that he communicates with the team, with Peanut, is one of the strengths that I think you can look at to his play, that he has solidified for himself as one of these options where, again, you can look at all these at this type of top 10 list. You can find players that are super exciting, super outplay, all these things. We just talked about those type of guys. But you look at someone like Doran and what he's going to provide for you at that bare minimum in that top side, and what he's not going to allow your opponent to gain in that top side is arguably the biggest thing and the biggest factor that he can play for Gen G.
The only time you've ever felt like Doran is a liability is when he has maybe an engage that goes a little awry, but even that has happened less. He's never getting slammed in laning phase. Maybe he's not dominating, but the amount of resources that Peanut and the gang are pouring into him, he is a serviceable is rude to Doran. The guy is above average and has actually been a highlight in a highlight-filled year for Gen G. We talked about most of KT being on that just edge of these top 20 listings. Keen is a prime example of that, sitting in the number 4 spot for top laners. But, I mean, this is a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if we see him show up against the likes of 369 and Bin.
I think that's when Keen is at his strongest, is just when you start to forget what type of tier player he can be, how elite he can perform, and how much he can carry for a squad like KT Rolster. Yes, just on the outside kind of looking in of our top 20 player list, but Keen is someone that can turn it on, can hit that stride at an event like this, find a pick, find a role in the meta, and really take it to the max is something that I'm expecting from someone like Keen. The only downside really at this point why he's not pushing up higher is, well, you look at the matchups against someone like Zeus, who you're also going to be talking about, is where you find that, you just don't have that push to push even higher in this list like someone like Zeus had.
I mean, in that top 3, starting with Zeus, then Bin, and 369, who of course we've already touched on a bunch throughout those top 20 listings. But really for me, which of these top 3 is the most likely to slip away and not perform at that highest level? Zeus, unless it's a best of 5. I'm not thinking it's him. Is Bin and BLG at that playoff level? Because if that's the case, it's gotta be Bin.
That's the thing. We're looking at a player like Bin and seeing if he can slip from this type of thing. You're thinking, well, do you bet on Bin, the Bin that we saw from the majority of this year? Or is it, as you mentioned, that playoff type of struggle that we saw from BLG? That really is going to be that question. And there is maybe not enough of this track record of Bin dominating to this degree that you would bet on him, doing that at this event. I think that is, out of this top 3, that's the guy that I'm looking at, maybe not quite able to deliver up to the excitement, up to the hype. And that partly is because the hype has gotten so high for him.
Roman into the jungle spot now, and we've still got a pair of Western guys represented. Again, it's EU. Razork is part of this incredible run in summer that Fnatic had. Not just part of it, but he was playing at an absolutely elite level, even matching up against guys like Elyoya. He's getting pocket picks like Karthus coming in. He's dominating on Ivern. Unironically excited to see Razork back on the international stage.
What has happened to the jungle that we're excited about a guy that's playing Ivern right now, and the way that the team is able to capitalize on it? Yes, Razork jumping onto this list, and this is one of those times where I think, he's found his way into this conversation in previous years, previous attempts type of things, but we still haven't seen it fully come to fruition for this type of player, knowing the potential he has, the type of impact that is possible on the international stage. I think that this is the opportunity for him with Fnatic right now, the way things have shaped up, all the turbulence, all the turmoil that you've gone through this year as a team, and to have that run of success through summer, that is where I'm banking that that's the Fnatic we're going to see at this event, and that Fnatic is led by Razork.
And his EU brethren, Yike, Rookie of the Year, feels conservative to even put him at 8 for how good this dude has been for basically the entire year and how good he was in his international debut at MSI. I might even accept him a bit higher, especially because it feels like owner stocks are at an all-time low right now for his young career, and maybe Yike goes higher, 7, 6.
For someone like owner, I'm maybe still a little biased with the T1 fandom, but I'm still looking at him as a player that has that ability to bounce back and be more impactful for this T1 roster. But you're right, when you're looking at Yike and what he has contributed for G2 this year, not missing a beat from arguably the most decorated jungler in Western history, not just, LEC history. We're talking about the whole West and what Jankos was able to do, replacing him without missing a beat, providing that type of heartbeat and leadership through your gameplay for this G2 lineup. Incredible stuff as a rookie.
And I mean, again, we've said it time and time again, filling the shoes of Jankos more than averagely, having a totally different play style, and it's still leading to title after title for G2. Jeune and Owner ahead of him, as I mentioned. And then, again, people might say it's blasphemous. We're sitting here, 2023, jungle rankings, and you got Cuz ahead of Canyon. And in years past, again, that would be laughable across the board. But if you watched KT and D+ in the summer split, how are you going to put Canyon ahead of Cuz?
You can't. You can't. I don't care what your value is on a player like Canyon and what he can do, that X factor ability, that unbelievable champion pool that, he can take something that's not in the meta right now. You've banned out everything, but he still makes that the thing that you want to ban out the next game. Yes, Canyon has that ability still. But what you saw this year from Cuz and the record and the proof throughout those splits, the spring split and that summer split, you got to be siding with Cuz, because you better believe this is the return of the T1 Cuz that we saw all those years ago. He has certainly dialed it in and found that right level of aggression, that right pace to match up with his KT laners.
And yes, you can talk about potential. Of course, peak levels from Canyon are exponentially higher than peak levels over the career of Cuz, and Canyon can get to that point, especially with a heating up Showmaker in playoffs. But current form heading into Worlds, I think you're just straight up disrespecting what KT and Cuz did to be putting Canyon ahead of them. And then this top three, which, again, we've talked about, totally different play styles when you're talking about guys like Peanut or Kanavi, who, I mean, both are playing for team first, but Kanavi can very much step into that I'm the carry this game role, and Peanut feels like he's more than happy being the old wily general, letting Chovy and Pays have all the fun.
I think it's at the point where you're looking at these, the two styles really that you're going to be getting. And for someone like Peanut, of course, his old style was much more like a Kanavi, like these type of, carry style that you want to be playing. But you realize where his strength is right now and where the liabilities start to come in with a player like Peanut. It's when you start to turn that dial a little bit too much on that individual setting. You're not looking for the stuff as a team. That's where you got into trouble against T1. That's where I can see that happening on the international stage again at this type of event. So as long as we're keeping it in pace, keeping it in control, and keeping it within, the aspects for the team, I'm liking what you got from Peanut in this type of position. Kanavi is somebody that I think right now, with the lead up to the event, with the Asian Games coming through, that he's going to get that starting role practice as. You better believe that he's going to be stepping into this event in the best shape possible.
And listen, the Asian Games being 7 patches before the Worlds patch, you might be getting some spicy picks unintentionally from guys like Kanavi who are saying, man, this was so strong at Asian Games, and then it's been buffed or nerfed 3 times since you played it there.
Doesn't matter. You got the good vibes, the good feeling, the good memories probably of playing it at these Asian Games, picking up these wins most likely. It's going to be a big thing. And it's a player like Kanavi, I think, has kind of unfortunately gone under the radar for just how good, just how consistent he has managed to be still for this JDG team that has has quite a lot of other firepower still.
Lastly, on this first part of the player rankings, we move on to the mid laners, and don't worry, NA LCS fans, finally here we are. An LCS player makes the list, and it is first-time champion Faker. Palafox comes in. He's been solo killing people across the board, dominated Jimenez and APA in back-to-back series. This felt like such a long time coming for him being hyped up as this domestic player from the academy scene, and now he's transcended to LCS champion. And listen, we're excited to see him compete against the best mid laners in the world.
Ooh, some long-term cold brew coffee coming in from the LCS. We've been brewing this Palafox brew for a long time through the academy, through the LCS scene, and finally we're gonna debut it on the international stage here with NRG. So happy that this is coming through, and so happy that he has really taken the reins of this NRG team as that front runner, as that lead guy for this team. Even if you have, you know, the contributing members and you talk about the other damage, sure, it's still there. This is Palafox's team, is this NRG roster, this NRG squad. And right now, heading to this Worlds, very happy to have him as an NA representative.
And he's really going to be tested because mid lane is a stacked pool as always. When you have a guy like Yagao at 9, that feels incredibly disrespectful to be a mid laner on a 16-1 regular season team that low. But even Caps has been playing at a high level in playoffs. You got Xiaohu at 7. That 7 to 9 spot are guys in years past you have in the top 3.
Now let's make this clear. Still solidified, happy Palafox number 10. This is fantastic for NA. There is a massive jump up in this list that rockets straight up, starting with Yagao, as you mentioned out. The fact that you go from Palafox, who we're, again, still high on, but you're going from there and you're going to a guy that is going toe-to-toe with Knight in these crucial playoff series in the LPL throughout his career. Yes, Yagao steps in there. I think we haven't seen him be not necessarily at that type of level where he has been able to match up, able to neutralize some of these extreme mid laners that you see in the LPL. Still someone to keep your eye on. And as you mentioned, just a little bit further up this list, of course, Caps and Xiaohu. Xiaohu's the one I really want to talk about, even as much as I want to talk about Caps. What Xiaohu has done throughout the playoff run, throughout that gauntlet run, and solidified himself as that other damage, that other threat that can carry, can pop off, can make those outplays against you on Weibo Gaming is an incredible threat.
He feels like another guy who ramped up over the year. I feel like early in summer we were saying, where's Xiaohu? This guy was at an MVP level on RNG. He showed up in the second half of summer, and especially that playoff/gauntlet run, as you mentioned. Obviously no stranger to the international stage as Xiaohu, as this veteran-filled roster of Weibo Gaming all fall under that umbrella. Then ahead of him, you've got a streaking, a finding his form level Showmaker, fresh off of gapping the defending world champion mid laner Zeka in that matchup against Hanwha Life. And most importantly, Showmaker's laughing, having fun, Mark. And that is when he's at his scariest.
Oh, watch out, people. When he's invested, when he likes the game, that's when you start to see the creativity, the skills come through from Mr. Showmaker. Yes, we'll remind you, a world champion Showmaker stepping in to this type of list. This is the scariest part of doing a list like this, is you realize, okay, we've taken that step up in power. We've talked about this type of range. And now you're getting into, well, these guys actually have an ability to turn it on even more and probably can be in that same category as the top ones we're going to talk about here. But you know what? They're just waiting in the weeds. They're just hanging out. A player like Showmaker having kind of this little subdued type of year. You see him turn it on a little bit in playoffs. We see him laughing. We see him having fun. Scary times for your opponents at Worlds.
And, you know, it feels like BDD here ahead of him on this list, much like Cousin Canyon. Historically, the names of Canyon and Showmaker, you just assume immediately throw them in top 4, top 3 in whatever list. But again, disrespectful to BDD to not, you know, showcase, highlight what he did throughout all of summer, where we were talking about a resurgent year for him. So even though Showmaker's cranked it on at the end, body of work for BDD after summer still put him number 5.
He's one of those players that I think is unmatched if you're looking for that stability in the mid lane and what he can do for his team. He still has a little bit of that skill to dial it up a little bit more and bring on that pressure onto the opposing team. We saw that even against someone like Faker through these playoff series, where he is able to get those big advantages, looking at the Tristana as the difference maker there as well. Hey, throw in me some of that Vigarth, some of that Xerath that we were also seeing from BDD as a nice little wrinkle as you head towards the World Championship.
And, you know, going toe-to-toe against Faker. Faker can go toe-to-toe against anyone on this list, but even at 4, it still feels like that top 3 is a gap ahead of even Faker. And when you compare Scout, Chovy, and Knight, any given game, I think one of these guys can get the better of the other.
I think when you're looking at the other type of lists and other roles that we've talked about so far, there is more or less that clear-cut number 1, number 2 type of guy situation. The mid lane, for me, it's just this block. It's just these 3. Slice them up, serve them up however you want. That's how I'm accepting this trio, because they are so unbelievably fantastic. What you have gotten from them this year, Scout, that whole run with LNG, and really rising up as this is one of these super elite teams in the LPL. Take notice of us. And then you look at the rest. Knight, what he has done individually, the steps in his career. He's looking as lethal as he ever has been. And we talked about him previous years as one of the top options at this role heading towards the event. And then, of course, back-to-back championships. Ain't no chokey. This is the Chovy show right now in the LCK.
You know, for Knight and other members of JDG throughout spring, MSI, even early summer, it felt like there were different guys who said, wow, they're not quite at the level of the rest of the team. But as you look at any of these rankings, now you go forward and it feels like everyone's playing at the appropriate super team level for JDG, which is why they're so insanely terrifying. Sure, you go Knight, Chovy, Scout, maybe they could match up. It's when you look at the rest of the rosters of both these that you start getting terrified of JDG.
I need to see a matchup between JDG and Gen.G. I don't know how this is going to fall through with the Swiss format and whatever, whenever we're going to get it. All I know is I need it at this World Championship. And you know why I need it? I need to dial me up the undefeated Syndra for Knight versus the undefeated Yone for Mr. Chovy. That's the matchup I need in the mid lane.
Listen, I think the LCK is hankering for these matchups against the LPL. They got embarrassed at MSI. They're looking for a little bit of redemption at this World Championship to prove that it is still very much a 1A and 1A small bracket B between the LCK and the LPL. Because right now, the LPL sitting pretty, proving that they are the top dog region. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, beautiful people. Just part 1 of these player rankings. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.